Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old 4th Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
So we had a bit of a crazy day in Metro Atlanta yesterday. We had a madman hijack a bus and take local authorities on a 3-county chase. Pretty crazy, right? I mean, that's not the kind of story you get every day in just about any city. For some reason, news cycles in Atlanta just aren't routine anymore. And then, of course, we have the major news story yesterday. Mass shooting, downtown Atlanta, inside a food court called The Hub. I was watching NBC News last night, and Lester Holt called it a popular spot. I don't know that it's all that popular, to be honest with you. There are food options there. It's not a bustling food court downtown, but there are a lot of offices down there, hotels, of course, as well. And so there's even like a foreign language class, even a Catholic high school not far from there. In either event, there were still a lot of people around, and a felon with a gun got into an argument with somebody else, and next thing you know, several people have been shot. Atlanta Police Chief Darren Shearbaum giving us the details in a press conference afterwards yesterday afternoon.
Here's what we know. We do have a certain amount of clarity because of video that is available to us. At about 2:17 this afternoon, we started receiving a combination of radio traffic and 911 calls reporting shots fired inside the Peachtree Center Mall at the food court. We believe at this time that a 34-year-old suspect armed with a handgun had entered the food court, and after a brief altercation with an individual, he shot that individual. And then that perpetrator continued on to shoot two others that were in the food court. Injured is a 47-year-old male from Grayson, Georgia, a 69-year-old female from East Point, and a 70-year-old female from Atlanta. After the suspect had shot the three individuals, he was encountering an Atlanta police officer who was off duty, working an extra job officer. This officer is assigned to our Zone 1 precinct on morning watch. That officer engaged him, opened fire, was able, while the perpetrator still had the gun, and citizens were still seeking safety, took that perpetrator out of the mix to be able to injure anyone else. And so I want to commend that officer, who I just spoke with a moment ago, for his brave action, his decisive action to end an imminent threat to this community. We had a number of agencies that responded to assist us: the Georgia State Patrol, the Sheriff's Department of Fulton County, the Georgia State University Police, as well as the MARTA Police. And then the FBI and the ATF also responded with resources. Since this is an officer-involved shooting, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation will take lead in this case. They will be gathering all the facts and giving us the information that we need. But I want to reiterate, one shooter, he shot three individuals inside of the food court, and an officer of the Atlanta Police Department acted decisively, placed himself in danger, and ended that threat to the community. And I want to commend the men and women of the police department for their work. And then behind me, I have a number of investigators that have been here gathering information that will be handing their work off to the GBI.
Yes, like you're told.
Yes, that is correct. As our mayor is pointing out, the person that we have in custody is a convicted felon. He has served prison time for an armed robbery, and he has 11 previous arrest cycles. This is an individual that should never have been possessing a gun, an individual that should never have placed this community in harm, but that an officer of this department was able to stop that threat.
Yeah, so we have a convicted felon with a gun, spotting the theme here, and an off-duty police officer, the mythical, usually, good guy with a gun, who, again, was an off-duty police officer. Instead of just some rando hanging out who, in Georgia, gets to conceal carry legally, deciding to play hero. It was an off-duty police officer, someone trained to handle situations like that. And lo and behold, everybody came away, I won't say walked away, because I have to imagine perhaps this felon with the gun who started all this may have left on a gurney. His name, by the way, is Jeremy Malone of Morrow, Georgia, south of Atlanta. He has, as Chief Shearbaum pointed out, done time for armed robbery. Arrested nearly a dozen times. And now he's got one charge each of aggravated assault, third-degree cruelty to children, reckless conduct, and possession of a firearm by a felon and during the commission of a crime, according to Fulton County Jail records. Hey, that reminds me of another story of a convicted felon and the right to bear arms. This from Fox News a few days ago. A Second Amendment group is vowing to sue the New York Police Department in an effort to defend former President Donald Trump's concealed carry license after his felony conviction in the hush money trial. The Second Amendment Foundation founder and executive vice president Alan Gottlieb said in a press release on June 6th that the group is willing to, quote, challenge the law to defend Trump's ownership of firearms. The quote, if Donald Trump is further prosecuted for owning firearms, Gottlieb said, we will offer to defend him and challenge the law. The group's promise to take on the New York court system came despite the state's law mandating that convicted felons are not allowed to have firearm permits. Possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, by the way, is a federal crime. The SAF said that their organization's position has always been that, quote, someone should not lose his or her gun rights due to a conviction of a nonviolent crime. Trump's concealed carry license was first revoked in April of 2023 when he was indicted for the hush money trial in New York. Gottlieb said the former president, quote, should not lose his Second Amendment rights. Donald Trump has no history of violent crime, Gottlieb explained. Under the Supreme Court's 2022 Bruin ruling, which requires gun laws to have some analogous connection to historical regulation at the time the founders wrote the Constitution and Bill of Rights, Mr. Trump should not lose his Second Amendment rights. There is no historical nexus to deny someone, including Trump, of their gun rights over such a conviction, he said. The founder said that the NYPD's preparation to revoke Trump's gun license highlights the need for reform in gun rights legislation. The attack on Trump's gun rights emphasizes the need to revisit existing gun control laws and change them to protect an individual's gun rights. Until that happens, Gottlieb says, we will be more than happy to meet New York State or the federal government in court. I'm curious what Gottlieb thinks about this story that also broke yesterday.
Tonight, President Biden arriving in Delaware, hugging his son on the tarmac after Hunter Biden became the first child of a sitting president found guilty in a criminal trial.
Well, Mr. Gottlieb of the Second Amendment Foundation does have a thought on this. He tells the Washington Times, oh, this one's a tough one for me. He mentions the law banning nonviolent criminals from possessing firearms is suddenly too broad, but that Biden's drug use makes the call tricky. Okay, let's go back to the story from NBC News.
It took just 3 hours of deliberations for 12 jurors to unanimously determine that Hunter Biden was guilty of 3 felony counts for lying about his drug use on a federal background check in order to buy a gun. Special counsel David Weiss, who oversaw the prosecution, saying this was not a case about Hunter's struggles with crack, but his decision to break the law.
His choice to lie on a government form when he bought a gun and the choice to then possess that gun. It was these choices and the combination of guns and drugs that made his conduct dangerous.
By the way, I have some thoughts on legal or illegal gun possession and legal or illegal possession of drugs as well that's going to enrage some MAGAs, I would think, in some deep red counties. We'll discuss that in a minute. Just hang tight.
Inside the courtroom, the president's 54-year-old son did not react as the verdict was read. He left the courthouse holding the hand of the First Lady, later releasing a statement saying, I am more grateful today for the love and support I experienced this last week from Melissa, my family, my friends, and my community than I am disappointed by the outcome.
No outside the courtroom ad hoc press conference speaking of two-tier justice systems and rigged and this, that, and the other. Interesting.
The verdict comes after 4 days of damning testimony from people who are or were once close to Hunter Biden. Many testifying about his drug use around the time he filled out the background check, saying he was not a drug user. President Biden, who said he would not pardon his son, writing, Jill and I love our son, and we are so proud of the man he is today. Jill and I will always be there for Hunter and the rest of our family with our love and support. Nothing will ever change that.
I'm kind of blown away here. I thought we had a two-tiered system of justice and that the Biden administration had weaponized it against his enemies. And wait a minute, if that's the case, his son is just now found guilty and is also a convicted felon and could face time in prison, and he's the president. Can't he do it? This is his weaponized justice system, the two-tiered system of justice. Why isn't he doing something? Please, by the way, note the sarcasm in the tone of my voice. Here's where it gets a little complicated discussing illegal drug use and possession of firearms. It's not that Hunter Biden was a drug addict who possessed a gun. It's that Hunter Biden was a drug addict who filled out an application to possess a gun and, according to the conviction, lied on the documentation about him being a drug addict. Believe it or not, it's not illegal in this country to be a drug abuser, an illegal drug user, and own a gun. That, according to a court ruling back in August of 2023, reading from Reuters, a federal appeals court ruled that a decades-old law prohibiting users of illegal drugs from owning firearms was unconstitutional as applied to the case of a marijuana user. Come on. The latest fallout from a U.S. Supreme Court ruling last year expanding gun rights. Thank you, Supreme Court. A 3-judge panel of the New Orleans-based Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals concluded that the federal law violated a Mississippi man's right to, quote, keep and bear arms under the U.S. Constitution's Second Amendment. The man, Patrick Daniels, had been convicted under law that after law enforcement found a pistol and semi-automatic rifle in his vehicle during a traffic stop, along with marijuana cigarette butts. The U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration did not administer a drug test, though Daniels admitted he sometimes smoked marijuana, which federal law prohibits. He was sentenced to nearly 4 years in prison. While his case was pending, the conservative majority Supreme Court in June 2022 declared for the first time that the Second Amendment protects an individual's right to carry a handgun in public for self-defense. That decision, New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, also announced a new test for assessing firearms law, saying restrictions must be, quote, consistent with the nation's historical tradition of firearms regulation. Circuit Court Judge Jerry Smith, an appointee of former Republican President Ronald Reagan, my God, how old is this man, said that decision meant the statute was invalid as applied to Daniels. In short, our history and tradition may support some limits on an intoxicated person's right to carry a weapon, but it does not justify disarming a sober citizen based exclusively on his past drug usage. Fellow Circuit Court Judge Stephen Higginson, an appointee of former Democratic President Barack Obama, in a concurring opinion agreed, while noting that many other gun safety laws had likewise been struck down since the Supreme Court ruling. Again, it's not about Hunter Biden possessing the firearm. It's about Hunter Biden filling out an application to possess a firearm, to purchase the firearm, saying that he was not a drug abuser or drug user, and lying under oath, which is a shame because, and listen, we can have a discussion about marijuana and the safety or, therein, yada, yada, yada. I'm thinking if that weren't the case, would not the Hunter Biden conviction trigger what could be a mass roundup of guns from those who are meth addicts, who are opioid abusers, who use anybody who has ever taken an illegal Vicodin or Oxy, somebody has, offered you one of their pills, you've got a little pain in, your side or your back's bothering you and your auntie slips you an Oxy or a Vicodin or something like that. You're using that drug illegally. If you then decide to go fill out a background check or an application to possess a gun and you say that you've never been an illegal drug user, well, you're lying under oath. I mean, who does that leave out? I mean, I'm sure I've used someone's prescription ibuprofen in the past, which is, illegal. But, just on the margins, it's kind of a nitpickery kind of thing, right? But if you've been convicted of possessing meth or cooking meth or distributing meth, and you later decided you wanted to purchase a handgun and filled out the background check application, this kind of precedent could really screw a whole lot of people over, right? Back after this, The Ron Show on the America One Radio app, AmericaOneRadio.com, on demand at ProgressiveVoices.com, or wherever you podcast. So when the show is over, at the end of the day, I put together all the show notes and include them at RonShowATL.com. That way, everything you hear me read, you can go then further read for yourself and see what it is I'm talking about. That'll include this clip from Abby Phillips on CNN, who noted the change of tone from conservatives with Hunter Biden's conviction yesterday.
Now, the moment, of course, creates the split screen of conservatives who just 12 days ago were slamming the rule of law, slamming the judge, the jury, and the verdict in Donald Trump's Manhattan trial. Mm-hmm. Some even claimed the conviction was the end of the Republicans we know it. But tonight, they seem to be singing from a completely different tune.
This is a new era in America, and I think it goes against the ilk of who we are as Americans and our faith in the criminal justice system. In the end, this jury of ordinary people from Delaware were not intimidated by that family, and they recognized that this was a clear-cut case and that clearly no one's above the law.
This is a very political exercise, and you have to say that it accomplished what it set out to accomplish. But I would say this about Judge Noreika. I think she ran a very fair courtroom. She ran a very fair trial.
I guess we all need, to shop at Banana Republic from now on? Because that's what it feels like. Yeah, a Banana Republic.
For years, the Bidens have been able to escape any legal accountability for their sleazy, corrupt conduct. But today, their luck ran out. At least Hunter's did.
Power is all they love. And they're willing to do anything to cling to it. They're willing to destroy the rule of law. The Republic has been wounded by weak lawyers and talentless political bloodhounds. It gave me a little boost of confidence in the American legal system, although they still have a lot of work to do to win me back.
I believe that there was a conscious collusion of allies that came together. It's pretty obvious, with a private strategy to eliminate a common shared adversary. Hunter's going to jail, so Joe doesn't have to. And when he comes out, he'll be rewarded for his loyalty, like a made man in a Biden crime family. This is a distraction from the influence peddling and the kickbacks.
Yes, these are two different trials under very different circumstances. Hunter Biden was federal. Trump's was not. The crimes and the evidence all completely different. But you can't claim the justice system is dead because of a single conviction while also praising it for another. Mm-hmm. And you can't claim President Biden is weaponizing the Justice Department to go after his enemies when that same department just convicted his own son. Mm-hmm. But in a world of MAGA, perhaps you can. Prominent conservatives are trading baseless conspiracies for another. Now they're claiming that Hunter Biden's trial was a sham to give cover to Biden.
Oh, yeah.
Charlie Kirk says the Democrats will use the conviction to claim that the system is fair. Vivek Ramaswamy, he calls it a smokescreen to deflect attention from Biden's other crimes. Republican Senator Tom Cotton says it's a way to insulate Joe Biden, who is guilty of corruption. Trump's campaign calls the case a distraction from the, quote, Biden crime family. Now, remember, this is the same Biden that conservatives claim can't walk, can't talk, or think on his own. But just so we're clear, Biden has no power over a state-level prosecution. But the same federal government that he actually runs just prosecuted his own son. And the system we're supposed to believe is rigged? That just makes no sense.
Yes, but Abby, dear, you have to understand, MAGA conspiracy theories aren't supposed to make sense to anybody outside the MAGA bubble. Meanwhile, closer to home, Georgia 14th Congressional District Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene tweets, the biggest crimes of the Biden crime family remain untouched. Millions of dollars from foreign influence peddling into Joe Biden's bank account. Hunter Biden just became the deep state's sacrificial lamb to show that justice is, quote, balanced, while the other Biden crimes remain ignored. She, speaking to the media yesterday, saying the only reason they convicted Hunter on 3 counts in comparison with President Trump's whopping 34 false felony charges is to give the appearance of a blind justice system. The American people don't buy it, she says. Marjorie on Tuesday calling for Joe Biden to be impeached by the House Republican caucus, but of course they've really cooled that idea. In the Politically Georgia podcast, they note, after a broad GOP investigation found ample evidence of influence peddling by Hunter Biden, but no concrete ties to his father, Marjorie Taylor Greene commenting, Joe Biden must be impeached and we must end the two-tiered system of justice in America. Incidentally, her Democratic opponent has yet to be determined. There is a primary runoff happening on the 18th. That would be next Tuesday. And that race has kind of gotten nasty between Sean Harris, who has been on the show. We've had him on the show, and Clarence Blaylock, who is an IT consultant from Atlanta originally, actually got out fundraised by Sean Harris by a precipitous margin, and yet in the general election, it was Blaylock who received the most votes. Blaylock, by the way, taking to his social media and to his website to refute what he calls Sean Harris lies about him. Interesting stuff. We'll try and get him on the show soon. This is The Ron Show on the America One Radio app, AmericaOneRadio.com, on demand at ProgressiveVoices.com, or wherever you podcast.
Follow The Ron Show on Facebook at The Ron Show Radio. The Ron Show on America One Radio.
It is, of course, LGBTQIA plus Pride Month. Huh. The alphabet mafia we are, right? I do have to admit, I have to parse myself and pace how I say it because it's a lot of letters. LGBTQIA plus. And I understand what they all mean. And I understand that the pride flag is now not just the rainbow flag. It is all the colors in the spectrum, plus the addition of the triangular colors that represent the trans community and the non-binary community. And I'm okay with that. We have seen in recent years what appears to be a bit of a pushback from conservatives and anti-gay politicians and activists, from many of whom come from hate groups. And here I am at the tender age of 50, having grown up in the closet in an era where it wasn't even a consideration that it might be cool to be the gay kid. No, it was not. It would not be. In fact, I can remember being that closeted gay kid in middle school and in high school who could always look to I don't know, there were probably three. I can think of three. I can think of Eddie. I can think of Jack. I can think of Daryl. These are three guys that, I mean, come on. We all knew. And by the way, I think the world of all three of them. Still close with Jack, as a matter of fact. He and I are on social media. We catch up from time to time. I'd love to know how Eddie and Daryl are doing. Should check that out later. Anyway, that's life in rural Georgia in the 1980s and 1990s. Like, I think we all, we did. We all knew about each other, but we dare not say what we all knew about each other. And we all had girlfriends. No, you know what? Daryl and Jack, I think, were kind of pioneering in the early 1990s for us. Like, we all knew that they were kind of an item. And the thing is, like, Daryl and I might have been an item, except like we kind of knew about each other's interest in each other. But again, this is 1991, 1992, and I had a had a girlfriend at the time, and so it could not be. I don't know why I decided to share all that with you, but I just figured that this being Pride Month, it might be an opportunity on an otherwise pretty slow news day to discuss a little bit about not just my coming out story, but my background, my biography as a gay man who grew up in the state of Georgia, who still exists as a gay man in the state of Georgia, and the challenges that I faced and some that maybe I still do. I don't know that I still do, but who knows? So I think I first knew I was drawn to men when I was completely affixed to watching the Dukes of Hazzard. Bo Duke was a handsome guy. I thought he was pretty. And he did. He had great hair. John Schneider, the actor, by the way, what can you say? I mean, he is what he is now, and it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't at all surprise me. I mean, he joins the pile of Scott Bayos and former TV and celebrity types who have gone full MAGA and anti-woke, whatever. I met John Schneider, actually, later in life, about the time he was 50 years old. I was in radio working for a Children's Miracle Network affiliate out of Alexandria, Louisiana, and we went to the CMN Telethon taping in Orlando, Walt Disney World. Nice guy. Such a nice guy. Still incredibly good looking. I'd have taken his number, but he's not. Yeah, I think I knew around like age 6, 7 years old. Yeah, I think it's kind of weird. Like I kind of knew. People think that we're grooming kids, or that there is a grooming of kids, or that parents of the LGBTQIA plus children are allowing this grooming to happen. And yet I can sit here and tell you, as a matter of fact, I knew at age 6, 7 years of age, somewhere in that realm, I kind of knew that I found men handsome or good looking. I grew up a Braves fan, right? Love baseball. Love the Braves. I am a walking encyclopedia about the 80s, the 90s to now Atlanta Braves. There's not much you can tell me that I don't already know about the Atlanta Braves. And naturally, growing up playing t-ball and baseball, the Columbia County Recreation Department was a fantastic organization. I'm sure it still is. And we cranked out a bunch of really good teams and players, Dixie Youth champions over the years. I love baseball. I always have. But I also knew that I found Dale Murphy to be kind of handsome. And do you know? He's a Mormon. Tall, handsome, clean cut, lives a clean life, Mormon. You know, I dated a Mormon later. I did. Like in my late 20s, early 30s, I dated a Mormon guy when I lived in Louisiana. And I have a type. I like clean cut, well-mannered guys. And so, in fact, I wound up even dating and eventually marrying and divorcing a preacher's son. Clean cut, well-mannered, until he wasn't. Preacher's son. I definitely had a type. But I knew I had that type, or at least I started to realize I had a draw to that type at age 6, 7 years of age. I'm waffling on the number only because I remember being in first grade and having a Dukes of Hazzard lunchbox in first grade. So, I mean, that had to be why. And I got a Dukes of Hazzard t-shirt. I mean, these are things that I cherished because Bo Duke's face was on them. I didn't come out until I was 19 years of age, to myself first, and then to those around me while I was away in college at Athens, Georgia. Not my family, but just those that I knew in college in Athens, Georgia. I remember and I went to a small high school outside Augusta, graduating class of about 120. I remember having some friends in high school who went to UGA with me, who I lost contact with. I can think of Michael. I can think of Anna. And I sort of just lost touch with them. And I don't think it was because they were like, oh, he's coming out, distance ourselves. I don't think it was that. I just think, you get older, you just kind of, and we weren't like close anyway. You just kind of lose touch with people. But yeah, the part of me that was gay in Athens in the mid 1990s was never coming home to see my family. Oh no. I continued to date the same girl into my freshman year until I found out that she had interest in another guy, and I used that as my excuse to break off things with her, and that freed me up to start exploring who I was. And I'm grateful that I was able to have a role model, someone that I just didn't know I desperately needed, but am so grateful I had at the time. My friend Greg, who is in his 70s, I assume, yeah, he's in his 70s. I just helped him buy a house last year. And Greg was not your stereotypical flamboyant, because in the 1980s and 1990s, that's all. If you knew someone who was gay, it was the guy on Hollywood Squares, the catty guy. I can't remember his name. Or it was, come on, we all know Richard Simmons, right? Has he ever said? But we all knew. Liberace, Elton John. Those were the people we knew were gay, and I just didn't relate to any of them. Couldn't. Greg was just a guy's guy. Drove a pickup truck. Loved going to UGA games. We went to UGA games. I remember the first UGA game we went to was Jim Donnan's first game, and Georgia lost. Georgia playing, was it Georgia? No, it was Southern Miss. Big Braves fan himself. Just a guy's guy. And finally, someone that I sort of relate to, and thank goodness I had that. There are kids today who now have a diaspora of potential role models because we in this environment have evolved from don't tell a soul to don't ask, don't tell to it's okay to be gay to marriage legalization. And now here we are. And there are those on the right, conservatives, anti-gay folks who would prefer it go back to that. And I'm so grateful that we're not going to. Despite people showing up at Target and showing their ass because there's some rainbow T-shirts or what was it, like a swimmy or something like that? I forget what it was. Nonetheless, we continue on. I'm so grateful for that. I came out to my dad first. I thought he'd be the last person I'd ever tell in my family. In fact, I thought I probably wouldn't tell him until he passed away. He's still alive. I'm glad I didn't have to hang on to that. I came out to him when I was 23. I was going through a severe bout of just being heartbroken. I don't want to call it depression, not clinical, but I was heartbroken because someone that I had taken a very keen interest in for months, I found out had sort of drifted on me and sort of used me financially while starting to show an interest in somebody else. Didn't go to work for 3 days, and I'm working in radio back then, and my mom's wondering why I'm not on the radio. She's listening. She was my biggest fan. She dispatched Dad over to see what was up with me, and I just kept telling her I was sick. I was under the weather, and I was sick. I was heartbroken. My dad pulled it out of me. And my dad, a man's man, deer hunting, pickup truck driving, sports loving, bowling with the boys for after work kind of guy, worked on cars a lot, good with his hands when it came to fixing things around the house. Man's man. He was the first to tell me, son, it's okay. I worked with people who were gay when I used to work in the nursing home business. Good people. Thought nothing of it. It's your life. You got to live it. This is my dad, the guy I thought I would never tell because I would be afraid of how ashamed I would make him. That could have gone a lot worse, I guess, and it absolutely did not. It really, at the age of 23 in 1997, it freed my heart. It freed my soul to be more who I was. And can I just tell you, after telling him, we let Mom in on it. Eventually, my aunt and my uncle, my grandmothers, over a course of a few months. And it was a process. And there were emotional breakdowns. I was never the type to like cry a lot. But man, did I do a lot of crying. And I think it was just cry of relief, right? I needed that. And I've been able to sort of be myself. That was 1997. Can I tell you, the first time I ever was hired for a job where the people who chose to hire me knew I was gay was 2018 because I worked in the radio broadcast industry. I had lost a job back in 2000. Not because I was gay, but I'm going to tell you something. The rumor mill, this is my hometown, the rumor mill hit. Oh, did you hear about Ron? Yeah, apparently he was caught in an undercover sting under a bridge or something. It's just the nefarious stuff that comes out from narrow-mindedness. I grew up in Augusta where a TV anchor, eventually his career got derailed because of rumors of him showing up at an emergency room with a gerbil, you know where, because of an affair he was having with an elected official. No, nobody knows that for a fact, but I mean, that spread like wildfire. That TV anchor lost his job. So when I was on the radio in Augusta, I dare not say a word. So anyway, yeah, the first job I took, where the company that hired me, the supervisor that hired me, knew I was gay. 2018. It's crazy, right? How old was I then? 44 years of age. So when anyone wonders why we need a gay pride, still, after all the gains societally and legislatively over the years, I say legislatively, the Supreme Court actually acted on marriage equality. I say it's because the next generation, the future generations of the LGBTQIA plus, don't just need to know it's okay to be gay. They need to know that they got to hang in there. Suicide rates amongst the LGBTQIA plus youth are multiplied, comparable to their heterosexual counterparts. So yeah, they need to know that it's okay to just grit it out. As tough as it is for you now, and I'm not going to dismiss that it's still tough for kids. I believe it still is, who are in the process of coming out. But that it used to be a lot worse, and even before then it was much worse. But that it's getting better, and that there's so much to live for, that you don't have to fit neatly into a stereotype. You can be your true self, even if you like sports and you like guys. And that society has a place for you, even if you haven't found it yet. You may even wind up being a former broadcast radio personality and station manager and political podcaster, residential real estate agent, softball player who happens to also love his cats dearly and taking hikes in nearby mountains and waterfall trails whenever you can. You just never know. Happy LGBTQIA plus Pride Month, America. This is The Ron Show. Back after this. I do appreciate you listening. If you missed any of today's show or you just jumped into the middle of it while listening to us on America One Radio, you can catch the show in its entirety via podcast or at ronshowatl.com or on demand at progressivevoices.com. Speaking of, being gay and liking sports, it's 2024, and you would think acceptance is kind of the mainstream now. It's normal. When the Atlanta Hawks shared their Happy Pride Month post on Instagram, the comments were disappointing. The Braves do an annual Pride game. It is next Tuesday at Truist Park. The response to that on social media, disappointing. Not as disappointing as the way they've been playing lately, if you ask me. Atlanta United's Pride match was its most recent home match. The disappointing outcome being what it was. Pineda losing his job. That needed to happen. The Atlanta United Pride kit, that was disappointing. I mean, there's like no color to it at all. What is that? I don't see gay pride in that at all. Anyway. The response to some on social media disappointing. But that's the thing. In 2024, this UGA fan, this Braves fan, this Atlanta United fan, Hawks fan, Falcons fan, they had a Pride ticket package, I believe last 2 years or so. I don't know if they're doing it again this year. I don't know. They never really got a whole lot of ticket sales on it. And also, Pride Month's in June nationally here in Atlanta. The Atlanta Pride weekend is the first full weekend in October because it's Y'all, it's hot here. We ain't doing that. I ain't hanging out in a park for 2 days in June. It's hot. So they moved it to October. But even that's encouraging. Like, I can sit here and dwell on the comments, and there are people who like to, let me go in here and see who's saying something hateful so I can spout back at them. I'm not going to let these people get me anymore. I'm just not doing that. Like, I skip the comments. It doesn't matter to me. It's just comical. It's backwater, dumb, marginally illiterate. Just not going to let it get me down. I instead am empowered by the fact that the team I grew up rooting for as a child, the Atlanta Braves, have a pride game. And that my good friend Kyle is going to throw out the first pitch. And that my good friend Greg is going to be singing the national anthem. And that we have an event, a mixer beforehand for everybody who bought a ticket package. You get a pride shirt. Not crazy about the shirt either. I'm not going to lie. As much as being a man's man as I am, I'm sitting here bitching about fashion, right? Anyway, I'm excited about that. It's uplifting every year, even if the Braves aren't playing well, to have the Braves host the LGBTQIA plus community once a year, and that they acknowledge us. They acknowledge the softball leagues that I play in here. They acknowledge the LGBTQIA plus community in many ways. The Atlanta Gay Men's Chorus, I believe, sang the national anthem last year. My league's commissioner, again, throwing out the first pitch. The assistant commissioner got to do it last year. The Braves Foundation has supported our softball league and leagues throughout the Southeast. That's fantastic. I, as a child, being a fan of the Braves and the Falcons and the Hawks, I never would have dreamed that I would be welcome as a gay fan with other gay fans to their games. And yet the Hawks have a pride game. The Falcons have had a pride game. Atlanta United has a pride game. The Braves have a pride game. We've come a long way. It's easy to focus on the negativity, but I choose to focus on the positivity. Now, don't get me wrong. I will clap back at a gay Republican. What are you doing? Honey, no, we don't do that. The truth is, actually, I do know gay Republicans, and they all fall into the same little file. White, male, grew up, if not in affluence, in relative fiscal comfort at the very least. And what sucks about them is that, like, in fact, I can think of a few of them, like, you know what? If they were into me, I'd so be into them, except for that. And I try to tell myself I would not let that affect me if everything else clicked. Would I date a gay Republican? I'm really not sure. I mean, you'd really have to win my heart. You'd really have to be good to my cats. You'd really have to be checking off every other box in a big way for me to bite my lip and date a gay Republican. But I'm going to keep an open mind because that's really what we all should be doing. Am I right? We're asking everybody else to do. It's going to do it for The Ron Show. Thank you for listening. Show notes, we got them for you at ronshowetl.com. Of course, when we post this to podcast, it's available there on demand at progressivevoices.com. We also replay 5 to 6 p.m. on the America One Radio app at americaoneradio.com. Back tomorrow, 9 to 10 a.m. There, we'll see you then.